Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. We're getting ready to have a very interesting conversation. The title of this conversation is The Price of Profit. And I know that's going to be very intriguing and interesting to you. And I welcome Managing Director, Development Consulting Center Limited, Mr. Richard Solomon, to join us back on set again. Good morning.
Very good morning to you, Rokas, and all our viewers.
How are you doing?
I'm good, A little tired, but... Yeah.
I completely understand that. Yeah. Now, in the international news, we've been seeing lots of very, very interesting stories.
Yeah.
Recently, the United Insurance CEO was killed, and that became, of course, news story. And
right.
Interestingly enough, the reaction from the public was people were rejoicing.
Yeah.
And it's an odd reaction to have when somebody is killed,
right.
who was not a known criminal or somebody who was destroying families and neighborhoods, at least not from the perspective that we can see or know about.
Right.
So how are these disasters or things of this nature, is that related to profit?
Well, how does a company make profit? The simple formula is sales less expenses or costs. Whatever is left is called profit.
Right.
So with that formula, an organization can improve their profits by reducing costs. And in the case of insurance companies, if we reduce claims or claim payments, then you can in fact reduce your profits because people are paying into the system. Yeah. So, it can be related. The insurance situation in the United States is very different to here in Trinidad and Tobago and most of the Caribbean, certainly. Yeah.
But in terms of, all right, so you mentioned sales minus expenses
or costs,
is what profit is.
Right. Yeah.
Is there a wrong way to make profit?
Yes. If you are taking advantage of people, maybe I should back up. So what's the right way? If I put resources, time, effort, energy, processing into something and improve it, even if that means getting it to you, then I'm entitled to charge a markup on whatever I paid or whatever it cost me to create that thing, right? However, there's such a thing as predatory profits. So in the case of the insurance industry, we saw, in this case of the CEO, and I should say, first of all, that we don't condone that kind of behavior. I mean, there are other ways to deal with these things than to go and exact revenge by vigilantism or, rogue assassin or whatever it is. But there is a wrong way, because if people have paid into the system and they believe, and apparently lots of people in the United States strongly believe that they got an unfair shake.
Right.
You are denying claims. They had the 3Ds. It was depose, deny, and I forget what the other one was. Frustrating people such that they can't get what they think or probably were promised. Then yes, there is such a thing as a wrong way to make profits. Yeah.
So, all right. The wrong way to make profits would be to take advantage of people.
Yes.
But we see it happening on a daily basis, right?
It happens,
and I say that, and not just in this context, because I don't know the details,
right.
all of the details are around the situation, right? However, I can safely say that if I go to one store and I see something for one price, right? Anything, if it's this cup, and I go to one store and I see this cup for $10, and then I go to a different store and I see that same cup for $20,
right?
Right? And is it always a matter of, did it cost this store more to bring it in, or did it cost this store more to make it, to produce it, or is it just simply a matter of greed?
It could be both of those, But you see, we do have to separate things like buying a belt, a cup, or cell phone, where you have easy substitutions, to something like, health insurance, where you pretty much lock yourself in over the long term and you've been paying into this thing, and the expectation is that you will get a proper claim or settlement when that time comes. That's very different to you saying, okay, I'm going to go buy a suit.
Okay.
And I go to place number 1 and I don't like the price or I don't like the quality or the combination thereof. I can go to place number 2 and I could do without the suit, right? We could inject Boeing here as a company who has had horrendous problems over the last few years, including planes falling out of the sky, literally. Lion Air, Air Ethiopia, hundreds of people have died. And the people who are in the know have said that Boeing took a turn when they bought McDonnell Douglas. And now, instead of focusing on making a good airplane, and they still wanted to do that, but they were focusing now on shareholder return, which is profit.
Right.
So that's a little bit of a difference, if I'm buying a mug or a suit versus if I'm purchasing an aircraft or companies purchasing an aircraft or health insurance, I'm locked in.
Well, yeah, but not just are you locked in, but there's a responsibility that comes along with it. It's not just about the profit.
Exactly.
But when you go to business school, do they teach you about that level of responsibility, or do they just teach you to balance the books?
Absolutely,
to work the numbers
no.
out?
They teach about proper corporate governance.
Right.
They teach about triple bottom line accounting. Profits, people, and planet,
right.
Which probably is the place to take this conversation. Because yes, we want to make a return on our investment. Every person who invests money, even if you put some money on a fixed deposit or some kind of simple instrument, you want to make a return. So that's profit. But there are people who go into making that. You have to think about the planet as well. And planet here includes the community.
Yeah.
You can't rape the system and then expect that system to keep giving you back. At some point in time, it goes out of balance, and obviously people are going to push back.
Is there a line between raping the system versus seizing opportunities?
That's a tough question, Rokas.
Thanks.
I don't know exactly what is the exact line.
Right.
I can't say what is the exact line. What I can say is this. There's such a thing as reasonable return.
Okay.
And even that doesn't have an exact definition. But if you get promised a return of 50% on your investment in a year, something is wrong with that. Somehow, somewhere, somebody's gaming the system. Now, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So it means that somebody's paying somewhere along the line. Somebody's paying for that, right? So if you're making a product for extremely cheap, it either means that you're putting really cheap profits into it, thereby the customers are going to, or cheap costs into it or materials, the customer is going to pay, or you're not paying people well for the labor that they're putting into it, and therefore they are paying, but somebody pays. So I don't know what the line is, but if you do triple bottom line accounting, you're taking care of all stakeholders involved, and that's what you have to do to make this make sense.
Is there a suggested amount that you want to make in terms of percentage when we talk profits? In terms of the percentage that you make, because I mean, what percentage of your sales do you want to end up being profit after you take all the costs?
That depends on the industry that you're in. It really greatly varies. One of the things that many people live by is if you make an investment into an organization, so it's not one that you're running, but you make an investment into a business somehow, then you should double your investment in 10 years.
Okay.
Right? So now that assumes a number of things, but it assumes that the business will do well. It assumes that you will keep getting profits every year, and
but
so
not just that. The actual economy. It
also assumes that the economy is doing well.
Stable, yeah.
And in some cases, that's not the reality. Now, there are people who more than double their profits over 10 years, and there are others that don't. But that's a guide that a lot of value investors use. And I said it varies. If you run a supermarket, then your margins are usually pretty narrow. So what you're doing is you're trying to build volume. Volume is where you get your money.
Right.
But if you're selling services, I sell services. So the cost of what I produce, a lot of it is in me and my consultants' heads. So we're selling something that we gain and we keep gaining over time and keep selling it to different organizations. So it really does depend on that. And it also depends on what the market is willing to bear. This is the other thing. So if we go back to healthcare and you think about a lot of the people who are vulnerable, making sure they're paying their health insurance. If they're vulnerable, then their ability to pay larger and larger sums is stymied. It's very difficult. Now, if you're wealthy, then that's not a problem. So it really depends on a number of factors. But the fact, I think, is that we should take away from this is that in the United States, we've heard the stories of healthcare. The number one way to become bankrupt in the U.S. is a medical emergency. The number one way. So if you think about that, and we have a situation in Trinidad and Tobago where we have universal health care. It's not perfect. It's not as good as we'd like it to be. But we do have universal health care, as many developing and developed nations have. It would suggest that the U.S. seems to have commoditized people. And therefore, it would suggest that.
You're trying to be politically correct.
I am, absolutely. On this 16th day of December, as we head to the end of the year, I am.
All right. Now, I want to bring it home because you mentioned that we do have universal healthcare here as well, right? However, we oftentimes see people having fundraisers for medical expenses and stuff like that. Because while we do have universal healthcare, unfortunately, as a result of that, we also have long waiting lines.
Correct.
We also have sometimes equipment malfunctioning and not being able to replace for time.
Yeah, yeah.
So we still have a cost factor here. Do you see or hear about similar situations where claims are denied from insurance? Here?
Absolutely, claims get denied in Trinidad and Tobago, but all over the world, the insurance company has to now do that. Remember, the whole idea of insurance is everybody pours into the pool, and therefore you have to meet the threshold or the requirement in order to draw from the pool. So yes, you do have denials here in Trinidad and Tobago, but clearly it is nothing like what our friends and family experience in the United States. I have had medical claims here in Trinidad and Tobago. I had a procedure. My doctor said this is what it would cost, just about. I sent that to the insurance company. They said, we'll cover this much up ahead. This is in front.
Right.
This is all elective.
Right.
And then, so I know this is the part that I have to put in. So there were no surprises. It was smooth, easy, So, and I know lots of people who have medical insurance. Of course, as you rightly said, our universal system, it's free and it's available to everyone. So it means that the line could be long. But we could do better there. Just in terms of being a lot more efficient with resources and people and time and so on. We could do a whole lot. And it's treating people better just in terms of the interface. So that's another another discussion.
That's a whole other conversation. Let's get back to the profitability conversation, right? What do you suggest companies do in order to balance those 3 Ps that you mentioned?
Yeah. So from a governance standpoint, so when we talk governance, we're talking about those who sit at the top of the organization, making sure that the organization is doing what it's meant to do and doing well, not just by the shareholders. Because just to keep in mind, if you only do well by the shareholders, the system will get depleted over time. Meaning that you're passing all the value to the shareholders. The customers are going to say, this is not fair to me eventually, and they will revolt, usually by walking. Right. So those who govern the organization must say, yes, we want to make a profit. But of course, we have to take care of those that buy our services and the space in which we operate. If you do business within a community, that community is holding you up. You have a responsibility to make sure that you contribute to that community in a manner that keeps the community whole and healthy. There may be exact formula. I don't know the formulae. I don't know them. What I do know is that if you take those 3 and you keep them in account, then what you find is that you are giving each bucket some. So the people, for example, the people who run the business, they deserve a fair shake. Now, they have to also pour into the system. And that's always a very tight balance because usually that's the number one cost on the income statement. The people cost is usually number one cost, except for airlines. And then that's fuel. Fuel is what burns their money up. No pun intended.
But I agree. So the people we definitely have to take care of, and not just the people who are customers, but the people who work in the organization.
Absolutely, yeah.
We have to take care of the planet,
which includes the community.
All right. What was the third P?
The first one, which is actually the first one, the profits.
Well, you see, this is the problem. Maybe it's in the wrong order.
Well, no. You see, the thing is, the number one function of the human brain is to keep the body alive. The number one function of the company is to keep itself alive.
Right.
You have to keep yourself alive. Because if the company is not alive, we can't pay anybody their salaries. Customers don't get what. So we have to protect the investors' input. There's no debate on that. But it cannot be that the investor is making 30 and 40 and 50%, as some of these payment processors that had a hearing before the Senate recently in the United States. 30, 40, 50%. And the customers are now ending up in all kinds of claims court because you are taking so much out of the system. Or people are living in their cars. People are living in their cars because they can't afford housing in a reasonable area to where they are working. But they work for you. But you are making 30 and 40 and 50%. That's unreasonable. That throws the entire system out of whack. Or you are taking too much from the customers as well.
So it's about finding balance and it's about
finding
fair.
A reasonable equilibrium. I am not going to sit here and pretend that those of us who put money into businesses don't want to make money.
We all want to make money.
There's no debate about that. As a capitalist,
but at what cost?
At what cost?
And that's something that we have to keep in mind.
And that's the thing. At what cost are you willing to go?
Richard, before we wrap up this morning, I would like you to do me a favor and look into that camera over there.
Right?
Yes.
Right.
And you can send Trinidad and Tobago whatever greetings you choose to send them for this beautiful season.
Well, it's the end of the year, and I know people celebrate different things at this time of the year, but I think we want to wish people, as you move forward into a new year, it's a time that we mark the best for this period and also the period to come. As we're talking about money, I would say to people, don't spend money that you don't have to impress people that you don't like. That doesn't help you. You want to be able to be in January in a comfortable place. Remember, January does have 60 days.
600 days.
600 days for some people. But all the best to all of our viewers for 2025.
Richard Solomon, Managing Director, Development Consulting Center Limited. This is, I think, is our last segment for the year.
Last for the year, yes.
Thank you so much for being here with us for the year, giving us the information, having the tete-a-tetes with, not just me, but Ayinka, with Natasha as well.
It's been my pleasure.
We definitely appreciate the information sharing, and we hope to see you in 2025.
Hopefully, preferably.
Preferably. We take a quick break and come back with more in our morning show. Stick around.